Welcome back to another week here on Instigating with Clarkie and Drury, brought to you as always by our friends at Coolbet Canada, the Listowel Squash Courts, Listowel Vision Care, See the Game, and our friends at Hanover Raceway. Don't miss all the excitement of live harness racing every Saturday up until this Saturday, the 17th, the final race day, post time at 1:30. Bring the family and come have a great time enjoying the sights and sounds. We bet you'll love it. Visit them at hanoverraceway.com for details on their upcoming events. And speaking of that great raceway, we have the general manager of it back on the show, our friend, Mr. Steve Fitzsimmons. Fitzy, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, and thank you for a lovely intro.
Absolutely. Hey, man, thanks for sponsoring the show. Come on, we got to show you some love. The feeling's mutual. Obviously, we're coming up on the last weekend here, Fitzy. Tell us a little bit about how this season has gone. No restrictions, wide open for the crowds to come out. What's it been like?
It's been phenomenal. It's been, quite frankly, our best wagering season in over 30 years. And,
wow.
We're more than happy with the amount of people that enjoyed the action that came on site. And, I think we had some specific individual things that were, extraordinarily popular this year. We had Trevor Henry Day and Bob McClure Day that were both excellent events that people were right into. Our Dream of Glory night was one of the biggest crowds I've seen in the history of the racetrack, with the fireworks afterwards. And it wagered a 32-year high that night for wagering. So, it's been pretty phenomenal to see the support we've received, and to see people feeling comfortable to come back into something that they were used to coming to for a lot of years, but the last couple of years have been quite different.
They obviously have, Fitzy. We've talked at length over the last, couple years, really, the last couple racing seasons, on what it's been like for you and the track, and really the horse racing, world coming through COVID. Obviously, you took over the Raceway at a pretty unique time, with a lot of unique challenges that no one's ever seen before. To come out of that, and keep in mind, during that time, I know you mentioned to us, you guys were still doing great wagering numbers. There was a lot of online engagement, but now that everything was back to normal this year and people could come out, what does it mean to you to be in charge of a racetrack that has done things that haven't been done in 30 years?
You know what? It's pretty cool. I have to say that it's, this place means so much to me. As a lot of people know, I raced there as a kid with my parents, and who raced horses at Hanover. And, it's always been a favorite, special place for me. And to be able to guide it to success that we've had lately, was a thrill for me. And, it's nice to see the support that we've got from the community, not just in the greater area, but even, nationally and further afield in the US. It's something that, it's hard to put it into words, but it means an incredible amount to me.
It's pretty incredible, too, the ties that people have to the racetrack, yourself included, obviously, as you just mentioned. I don't know if you tuned into the show last week, but our friend Rob Longley, who is our good buddy, the beat reporter for the Toronto Blue Jays, used to cover the Hanover Raceway. That was his first job at the London Free Press, was covering horse racing, and he usually found himself down in Hanover. It's pretty incredible how small the world is when you bring horse racing into the equation.
I actually didn't see that, but I noticed that we were tagged on social media, and I was wondering what that was all about. I'll have to go back and watch that when I have a chance. But yeah, that's neat this year, and certainly Rob has had a great career in the media, and I didn't realize he had started with covering Hanover, so that's neat.
Well, it's a wonder why he went off to such a great career. He got such a great start on a good beat, didn't he?
He did.
We're heading into the final Saturday, the 17th, post time at 1:30. I'd encourage everybody to come out, tell everybody what's going to be going down on the final Saturday at Hanover Raceway.
It's a power-packed day, to be fair. We have, of course, all of our year-end awards presentations, which includes the Bud Fritz Rising Star Award among them. But we also have a $10,000 Bud and Ethel Fritz Memorial Race, which is an invitational pace for some of the top, pacers in the province for B-Track. So I think that's going to be exciting. We have OSS prospects for 2-year-old colt pacers and 2-year-old colt trotters. And a thing that I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy, which is we're having a mini horse race. Some young kids, 11, 12 years old, are going to race their mini horses for an eighth of a mile. So pretty much, just before the top of the stretch down. This has been popular elsewhere, and it's been done, many years ago we've had it at Hanover, but the opportunity presented itself that we could host it this week. And so we certainly jumped all over it. And I think the excitement from our fans is very palpable. Like, I'm seeing the social media engagements for that particular post are off the charts, and people are excited to see them. And to be honest, the little mini horses are going to come into the grandstand actually and meet people after the races, after their race. And that's between the second and third race they're racing. And then they'll come back over and people will be allowed to pet them and get photos with them and stuff. So I think that's a unique experience, right? That's a neat thing to see, and to see these young up and coming young harness racing people bring their little mini horses for us to watch. I think that's going to be fun as well.
It's a great idea. Engage the young people, get them out there. And who doesn't want to pet a mini horse? Come on, folks. Who doesn't want to do that? You're an innovative guy, Fitzy. I mean, I've always known that about you. And I'm sure everybody that's attended the racetrack over the last couple of years since you've took over can quite clearly see that. On that note, obviously, I know we're leading into the final weekend of the season. You'll be looking ahead, as I know you will, toward next year and some things that you can try out next year as well. What are some ideas maybe that you could give us a little inkling of that potentially might be in store next year at Hanover Raceway?
Well, I think something that we've been thinking about, but really wanted to do it well. And quite frankly, our friends at Grand River Raceway have done a masterful job of it, is having wiener dog races. Between horse races. They drew something like 1,500 people to come and watch these wiener dog races, which they did a phenomenal job of organizing. And it was, their idea. And quite frankly, I'm probably going to take a page from them next year and try to do that particular event justice. And, they joined us on the Women's Driving Championship, so I'm going to join them on maybe the wiener dog races. A good idea is a good idea. And, we're all in the entertainment business, so I don't think we mind borrowing good ideas from each other. And I think that's a good idea. It's certainly something that was really popular there. So I think we'll look to do something with that.
That'll be a lot of fun. I would love to come out and see some dachshunds rocketing around the track. Count me in. That's fantastic. I'll lay money down on that. Why not? Obviously, you mentioned the Women's Driving Championship. I want to check in on that. This was something that you were very passionate about, Fitzy, that you kind of spearheaded. You were really one of the driving forces in getting this thing off the ground, and it's grown into a really great event, our second annual year. Just tell us how it went the day at Hanover Raceway this year, and where we stand with that and when it all comes to a close.
It went really well. And of course, ourselves and Dresden founded it last year. And then we had Grand River Raceway, the Raceway at Western Fair and Leamington join us this year. So with our leg went really well. And we're more than happy with the customer engagement and putting the spotlight on the top women drivers in our province and maybe even in our country. And, it was a great day for charity as well. So I think it was a win-win-win. So then they went to Dresden the following day, and they were at Grand River a few weeks ago. And they're on to the fourth leg on September 25th at Leamington. And then the final will be at Western Fair on October the 14th. And that'll have a huge spotlight on them. And, they deserve it. And I think, it's been very competitive. The defending champion, Natasha Day, is in the lead right now, trying to retain her title. It's not over, but she's doing very well. She had a banner day at Grand River with three wins and 5 races. So she's got herself a bit of a lead going. But, there's lots of racetrack to come, as they say. So she's got 2 more events to get through to maybe retain her title or maybe not. We'll see. But Julie Walker from Own Sound has been very good. She's been very strong. She's in second place. And some of the other ladies certainly have a chance. The interesting thing, of course, is that the Raceway Western Fair, the points are doubled. So you can have a bit of a lead And it might not be enough of a lead because, that's the final and it's worth double the points. So, you can get your lead whittled down pretty quickly if, you don't finish well and someone else wins a couple. Suddenly it becomes very interesting. So we're looking forward to that over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Obviously, it's about 4 weeks away, I guess, now for the final. But Grand River Raceway, they put on a real show 3 weeks ago. Raised $25,000 for Harness to Hope, which is an incredible figure. And so I give them so much props for the effort and commitment and time that they put into something that's obviously very dear to me. And they did that event very much the justice that it deserved and gave it the showcase that it did as well. So we look forward to Leamington and Western Fair upcoming.
That's fantastic news. I love the double points day to round things out. I'm a stickler for drama, and Natasha Day, boy, she's looking well in position to potentially defend that title. She's kind of becoming the Danica Patrick of horse racing. It's pretty darn impressive. Fitzy, I'm really stoked to hear that the year went great. I'm personally not surprised. I don't think anybody in the future should be surprised at how well Hanover Raceway operates and runs. Again, we appreciate our relationship with you. You've been good to the show. Hopefully we've been good to you in return. And we're hoping that we can get everybody out there for the final race day on the 17th. This has been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing too. So we're also having a silent auction this week in support of the Hanover Fire Department, who's raising some funds for some much needed equipment that's not within their budget. And also we're having a barbecue after the races in support of them as well. And we're having a free concert with Juanita and the Big Deal performing while we have that barbecue. So stay after the races, have fun at the races, stay after the races for a free concert and support a great cause in the Hanover Fire Department.
That's always my favorite thing about you, Fitzy. There's always just one more thing. and that's why Hanover Raceway is the place to be. We really appreciate this, my friend. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, Clarky and I are going to sit down the 30th anniversary recently of the Fan. Allan Davis, the first PD there and Clarky's first boss at the Fan as well. He's going to join us next to talk about the significance of the great sports station. Coming up next here on Instigating with Clarky and Drury. Welcome back to Instigating with Clarky and Drury, brought to you by our friends at Coolbet Canada. I'm Ryan Drury, still with you. Clarky joins us now, and we're very pleased to be joined by another great special guest on the program. It was recently the 30th anniversary of the Fan up here in Ontario, and we have the first program director at the Fan and currently down at WGR Sports Talk Radio 550 in Buffalo. Mr. Allan Davis joins us. Allan, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you joining us. And man, 30 years of the Fan, and you and one Mr. Chris Clark were there at ground zero. You were there at day one. I mean, when you look back on 30 years of that station, what's it like? What was it like getting that thing off the ground? And obviously during an exciting time for the sports landscape in Toronto too.
Yeah, it was. Clarky and I have known each other for probably about 35 years because we worked together before the Fan at Telemedia Sports Radio, the network. We had the Blue Jays and we had the Maple Leafs at the time. And Telemedia owned CJCL. And it was a station that didn't have a great signal, but it did have these sports properties. And as you said, Ryan, during that time, certainly the Blue Jays were taking off, winning a lot of games. And we were struggling as a daytime radio station musically with talk. We had tried different formats and it wasn't connecting. And the idea of maybe looking into expanding our sports platform started to become more aggressive. So in the late 80s, Chris was there for that. We expanded our pre and post game programming around the Blue Jays and just kept expanding to the point where, well, we might as well go the whole way. So in September of 1992, we launched it as a 24-hour radio station. It just happened to be at the same time that the Blue Jays were winning their first World Series in the country. And so it was a huge win-win. It was a terrific ride. And of course they won it the next year as well. And the Maple Leafs were starting to come around as well. You guys, Chris might remember, maybe you, Ryan, too, that in 93, in the fall of 93, the Leafs got off to like a 10-0 start that year. And it was at the same time that the Blue Jays defeated Philadelphia to win their second World Series. And as people were going up the street on Yonge Street North cheering for the Blue Jays, there were people coming down from college yelling, "The Leafs are 9-0." I'll never forget that. It was an amazing time. So it was a great time for us to flip the station to all sports because it got a ton of attention with people tuning into the games. And we launched it there and never looked back.
Allan, when did the discussion start? I mean, we launched in 92, but when did the real discussion start and who was involved? I know John Ray was the general manager there, and of course, Paul Williams with the network, and Philippe Degaspe-Beaubien was owner of Telemedia, but who was involved with the decisions to go all sports, and when did it really start?
The discussion we had kicked around the idea for maybe a year or more before we launched, Chris. We kept looking at the Blue Jays property and the demand for more content, the demand for more sports talk centered around the Blue Jays. It just kept coming. And Paul Williams and Lynn Bramson and Don Pagnuti and John Ray were very much the center of that. And we just kept adding and adding. And eventually when we moved Bob McCowan to primetime and we saw what a hit that was, which would have been, 89, 90, somewhere around there.
Primetime started in 89,
yeah. But then I think it really started to heat up about a year after that, and especially since the Blue Jays were so popular. And we saw that in New York, the Fan had gone, WIP in Philadelphia had launched, station in Denver had launched. I think the ticket maybe in Dallas had already launched. Yeah. And so we started to look at it, and honestly, we were out of options. Let's just face it. I mean, we tried all the music formats. That was over. And so at one point, it became apparent that the best decision we could make was to go 24/7 with it. So I think it got serious in about late winter of 92. And in March of 92, we did go evenings because we had Bob, and then I put Dan Schulman on in the evenings. And I remember saying to Dan, I said, "Your life will never be the same after tonight. It will never be the same." And partially that was because he was so good. I knew once people heard him, he was just going to take off and be a superstar, which is true. But I would say March of 92.
You mentioned Bob, obviously, in my mind anyway, he was the franchise. He was the guy who the whole radio station, to me, was centered around. But how much fun was it for you to put the rest of those pieces? Don't worry about if the morning show worked or not, Allan, that we can talk about that later. But how much fun was it piecing everything together and finding that talent?
I wish I could say fun was the word. It was, as you know, it was frenetic. It was crazy.
Oh, yeah.
We were flying blind. And obviously we had Bob, the centerpiece. Yeah. We had Dan Schulman, who was on board by that time. We had the play-by-play properties with Tom and Jerry and Scott, and Buck Martinez was part of that.
By the way, Buck's still waiting for an invoice. You haven't signed it yet. Sorry, an inside joke, Ryan.
That comes up more than once, and he's not the only one.
Yeah.
I may have signed him and probably didn't get paid.
Oh, okay.
And then there was Ken Daniels was still there, and we have Bonesy and Billy and Bob were working together. Wilbur was with the station at that time, and Gord Stellick was working with Joe. So there were a lot of things that were actually in place. So it was really filling out the rest of the dance card. I wouldn't say it was fun. It was stressful. Identifying people to fill these time slots was really a challenge. Not just that you could recognize someone's talent, but then you had to convince them that this was a good idea. You had to convince people that, hey, come on and try this format that's never been tried before in the country. We may go up in flames, we may not, but hey, why not? Come on over and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. That was really challenging, and we also had to establish credibility, because if we miss once, we're not going to get a second shot at it. And so, you just couldn't put a radio station on the air with a bunch of guys talking sports that really didn't know the games or understand the stories. So that was challenging to go out and find the right people. Fun at one level when I landed people like Steve Simmons and Mary Ormsby, and that became exciting. And then putting Gord with Damian Cox I remember listening to them on the weekend and just going, oh my gosh, I love these guys. I just love these guys. And so that became fun at some point.
You had such a roster there, in terms of talent that have become household names. I mean, basically all the guys you just rattled off, Clarkie and Allan, are well-known sports media personalities, and none more so obviously than Bob McCown, who was the guy. He was the franchise, like you said, Clarkie. What was it like for you to kind of work with Bob? We had him on our previous show. I've heard a lot of great stories from Clarkie, and I mean, that night that we talked to him, from Bob himself. I would describe him sometimes as combative. He would never back down from a guest. He always had challenging questions. Was he the same guy off the mic as he was on the mic?
No, I don't think so. I do. Chris worked with him really closely day to day, and I mean, you could do a show with Chris on Bob. So, but I knew Bob years before we launched, worked with them. And, Bob is an extremely smart broadcaster. His communication skills on the air are second to none. So the way I worked with him is I let him do his job. Where we would battle is, how much is this worth? We were always discussing that. He was forever, never, ever signing contracts. He always had a better idea than signing a contract. But we didn't battle about what he was doing on the air. I don't think really ever. He was just, what would you battle about? I mean, he knew what he was doing. He was excellent at it. And so he was someone that you just had to let him do his thing and make sure you supported him as much as we could. And that always wasn't the case. We weren't always able to support him the way probably he wanted to, because you got to keep in mind, we didn't have this money machine coming in to launch an all sports station. We had a company that was looking to save an AM signal. Mm-hmm. And they'd already invested heavily in sports rights for the Blue Jays and the Maple Leafs. And now we're going to add all this expense to a 24-hour radio station that's going to be talking sports. That wasn't an easy sell. So I would say that Bob, for me, I enjoyed working with him. We had a good relationship off the air. We had challenges every once in a while, like anybody, but we overcame those.
Did you lean on him when it was time to fill out the rest of the roster? Did you guys talk about it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He, I certainly trusted him, and he and I were on the same page about what we wanted to do. That was probably the most critical part is Ryan, when you listen to other stations in the format at that time, if you listen, for instance, to WIP in Philadelphia, that was all call-in. The hosts were not allowed to have guests. It was all about the listener. It was all about being different from the Fan in New York, because those signals, IP and WFAN, they crossed over with Philadelphia and New York City. And if you remember, the Fan at that time had launched Mike and the Mad Dog, which was just really caller-driven, combative, those two going at it. And our feeling was that wasn't going to be successful for us out of the gate. What we wanted to do was reverse that equation. And instead of having people call in, we wanted to do call-out radio, which would be, let's take people to the stories. Let's get the people on who are involved in the key stories surrounding the Blue Jays, the Maple Leafs, or other sports stories that were happening around Toronto. And it's something that Bob bought into and was on board with and was executing with primetime anyway. So really, we were just talking about taking primetime and expanding it. So yeah, he was key to that formula. Absolutely, totally.
We're chatting with Allan Davis, the original program director of The Fan, currently down at 550 WGR Sports Talk Radio in Buffalo. It's interesting you bring up the call-in and the interactions that occur there versus just kind of being more of an informative radio station in the sports talk platform, because I know down at WGR there is some call-in element. Our friend Dwayne Steinel, people refer to him as Buffalo Dwayne. He had a now infamous viral rant on your station, which was pretty hilarious at the time, and he's turned it into a nice little career for himself. What's your opinion on how much is too much in terms of fan interaction when it comes to the sports talk medium?
I don't think you can have too much now at all. I've flipped over the years out of necessity. When we launched The Fan in 1992, you didn't have social media at that time. The primary connector was an over-the-air signal, largely on AM radio, not necessarily even on FM radio. So the primary connector was that signal to that listener in their car. And so that person calling in at that point was connecting at that point with the host. That was the only way it was going to happen. Call out, because I think Chris will remember, we called John Candy in a car when Bruce McNall bought the Toronto Argonauts. I'll never forget. It was one of the moments I love to point to as us taking people to the story. John Candy was in New York, and Bob got him on Primetime Sports, and he was, with those big brick phones at that time. Who
got him on?
I think Chris Clark probably got him on. But,
I don't even remember that.
But it was either you or Howard, I can tell you.
Could have been Howie, yeah.
Yeah, but that was the prime example of what we were trying to do at that time, was take people to the stories, and it was working. It was fantastic. Flip it to today, Ryan. Because our listener, in most cases, is more connected a lot of times than our host, more engaged in sports a lot of times than our host, because they have all these platforms and social media to be on all the time. I believe that the connection and engaging with that audience openly, segment in, segment out almost, is critical. And so I encourage it with our guys here to do it. And some days we're really heavy phone calls, certainly after a Bills game. Other days, not quite so much, because the guys do get into really good conversations and people want to hear really good conversations. But the listener is a prime ingredient. She is the other person in the studio. Every time you think you're by yourself, even you guys, when you're doing a podcast, if you think you're by yourself, you're not. There's always a listener. That person is always there. They're always there. And I've preached that for 40 years, that, every time you think you're alone, you're not. You're never alone. Instead of taking them to just the stories, now interacting with them and getting their opinions and engaging on all platforms, Twitter especially, is really critical, really critical.
Back in 89 when Primetime Sports started, and then 92 when The Fan launched, Ryan, obviously there's no internet back then that you could listen to other radio stations. And I don't have a great memory, Allan, of back then, but I remember a few things. And I remember you were the one that brought me in. You were the one that hired me. I got a tap on the shoulder at Humber College from Stan Lark, who I'm sure you remember. And Stan said, hey, the sports what did he call it? Sports Network is looking for somebody. And I thought he meant TSN. He goes, no, tell me the radio. I said, okay. He said, call this guy, Allan Davis. Called Al. We had a meeting, and then I waited a week and nothing. So I called Al back, and he goes, oh, yeah, come on. You got the job. Come on in. So I started as an operator, operating Blue Jay baseball and Maple Leaf hockey, and then made my way up to primetime. But Howard Berger was the first producer of primetime in 89. And I remember when I got the job, and I was a nervous wreck, and I met with you probably at 10 in the morning, Allan, and we opened the newspaper and we looked at stories. Boy, how times have changed. Right now you have so much more access to stories, and with the internet and social media. I mean, obviously the world has changed, but boy, sports radio has changed too.
Yeah, well, sports radio is very much a part of the story now every day.
Yeah.
How often do you hear, I want to hear what they're saying on the air. I want to see what they're saying on Twitter. I want to follow them. Yeah, it's totally changed. But we're still trying to reach the same audience. We're still trying to keep that audience as long as we can. We're still trying to get them to come back as often as they can. So that hasn't changed. The way we do it certainly has changed, and for the better. So much for the better. I do believe that there are many more people out there, not broadcasters, on a sports radio station that want to be. They just want to be on the station because they love listening. It's, so that part really hasn't changed. When we launched in one school, they asked the kids who were probably 8, 9, 10 years old, 3 things that were new and exciting that they had learned about or happened over the past year. And of the 3, the launching of the Fan was one of them. It was an unbelievable realization that it landed and that it was going to stay around for a long time. It was so exciting. It really was exciting to be part of that at that time.
Do you think the Fan was ever close to shutting the doors?
I was asked. I was on with Bob and with John Shannon.
Okay.
And I don't know that. I don't know. I was never part of that.
Yeah.
Certainly, I will say this, that behind the scenes, the administration of it was challenging. It was really challenging. And, we had when we lost John Ray, we lost a huge part. I don't think that gets mentioned enough, that we fly by the seat of our pants in year 1. And by the end of year 1, we had a full cycle of the Blue Jays and the Maple Leafs, by the way. So we started to get an idea what numbers might look like. And then John leaves, he's gone. And so that second year was not fun. That second year was really, really challenging. And how to monetize it still hadn't been figured out. So were they close to closing it? I don't think so. I do think that they were certainly sitting on, how are we going to figure this out? What are we going to do with it? Because it was pretty clear that it had an audience. It was pretty clear that it was getting a lot of attention. It was the other side of the equation about how to monetize it hadn't been figured out. And you have to ask yourself, how long can we hang on? There were other stations in the U.S. that hung on. Some didn't. So for that question to be asked that's logical to ask that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
How is sports radio thriving now in the U.S.?
It's a huge format here. Huge format.
Then why does it seem to be stumbling in Canada? You can answer both here.
I answered this way the other day, and I believe this. Our company, Odyssey, that I work for, we own the Fan in New York, WIP in Philadelphia, EEI in Boston. We own stations in the Score in Chicago. We own a lot of sports formats across the country. But our company is in the audio business. We're in the radio audio business. That's what we do. The passion for radio, the passion for audio is with ownership on down. I don't believe that's the case with the current stations in Toronto, because they're owned not by passionate radio people. They're owned by passionate people who want to deliver great content. But I just think you need people who are really passionate about radio and about audio. And that trickles down through every department and comes out of the speakers. If you have somebody that is passionate about radio, then they're talking about it every day. And it's what they do every day. My feeling is that might not be the case for those 2 stations up there right now.
It's kind of showing really, Allan, when you listen. And I think the consensus, geez, Clarky, how many times have we talked about this the last little while? I think the consensus among a lot of fans is that it's more pronounced at Rogers and by extension the Fan than it maybe is at Bell and TSN, as an example. You know, you were the first PD at the Fan, and you just said it. There's not a cohesive vision in place right now where the radio side of Rogers is the main focus and the main drive in terms of success.
And if I could just interject, Ryan.
Yeah.
As Allan said, when things happen in sports, we always wanted to hear what Bob McCown had to say or what Dan Shulman had to say. Who is that now in Toronto besides maybe Jeff O'Neill, right? Like the talent just, in my mind, the talent is not there anymore. But I don't know.
I'd love your thoughts on that, Allan.
Well, that does have a lot to do with it. You know, again, leadership at the top who love radio or in the audio business recognize the importance of key personalities, strong personalities that can drive shows, that can drive conversation, that can go deep into stories and connect and engage at all levels. I mean, it's absolutely critical. Mm-hmm. That versus take a couple of people who like talking sports and put them on a time slot and let them talk about sports. So, you know, we're not in the sports business. We're in the broadcasting business. That's what we do. But, you know, Chris Clark, maybe you were Ryan too, but we've run a number of formats. Sports wasn't our first format. We've done other formats. You know, I've been in radio. It's going on 45 plus years. I didn't do sports for a lot of it. I did music. I did talk. Yeah. So I'm in the broadcasting business. Yeah. And so the personalities that connect with an audience is critical. And you need one for sure. And usually in our format, afternoon drive is where you want that to be. You want to build out from afternoon drive. But because the format's been around for 30 plus years, it's every day part. Mm-hmm. And so if you fill out the lineup and you have people who just like to talk sports but aren't really good broadcasters, I'm sorry. Again, most of your audience knows a lot more in sports than some of the guys on the air. It's just look at the access we have to all the information. I mean, I can get all the information as fast as the guys on the air. It's what they think about it. It's their opinion on it. Exactly. That's what changes whether or not I want to listen to them. If I say I want to know what Mike Shope thinks about this story down here, or what Howard Simon or Jeremy White think about it, and trust me, it happens all the time. It's because they're personalities and they know how to engage an audience, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Exactly. And in Canada, in my humble estimation, Bob McCown, Don Cherry, Mark Hebscher, all those guys who I grew up listening and watching, and, you know, we had the Grapevine there on our Grapeline, I guess it was called, on radio. Yeah. Those are the guys. And now it just seems like all those guys are just getting eliminated. And like it happened in the news here with Lisa LaFlemme. Like it just, I don't know. That's why I'm selling cars now, Allan. That must be. Hey, the very best show though that you put together, in my estimation, was The Producers. Do you remember The Producers?
I love The Producers.
It was myself and Todd Macklin and I think Mitch Kersner. You hosted the first one. Brian Williams hosted the second one, and then I hosted the third one. And I don't think we ever got back on the air after that.
Well, you know, and that's the only reason that you didn't get back on the air was everybody's schedule, and that was the reason. It was a reason. I love the idea of The Producers, because I love the idea of all the work you did through the week and then sitting down and going, just let these guys roll and talk about what it was like to work with the talent and your takes on the stories. And
it was fun.
Trying to get a hold of guests and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it was Sunday nights. Yeah, it was a terrible time.
And there are three shows that I really liked. And I'm glad you mentioned The Producers, because that was definitely one. But I also liked what Jim Richards was doing on Saturdays, because if you remember, he was taking all the outtakes through the week. So he was busy cutting tape. I mean, today you could do it in an hour, but back then you can imagine you're cutting tape so that you can get sound bites of outtakes, stupid things that people said through the week, a caller, something Bob said, or some outtake that happened. And he would do that on Saturday mornings. And I love that. Yeah. And then, of course, when you had Gordon Damian with the Cub, I mean, that show when I first heard it on the weekends on Sunday, I remember calling John. I called him and I said, you have to listen to this show right now. This show is definitely got a lot what we want on the air on a day-to-day basis. Then we moved them into middays when we could.
Yeah.
But those I love the show. And every place I've been, Ottawa, Kansas City, Portland, Tampa, and in Buffalo, weekend shows, I'm always testing, and that's where the next talents come from. I'm constantly doing that, and I've been rewarded. I've been rewarded. I truly have. I've been fortunate to find great personalities.
Mm-hmm.
You really have. And I mean, it's an interesting conversation because we see the struggle that the format is having up here. And it really makes no sense. Like you said, Clarky, and yes, an investment in talent is really a burgeoning issue at the forefront of it. But it's frustrating as a sports fan up here because you do need those dynamic personalities. And I feel like a lot of the time they're not being invested in. We see it recently with Steve Dangle, Clarky. I mean, that guy should be on the air, front and center on Sportsnet all of the time. And now he's gone off and started his own podcasting network, and it's becoming very successful. Like, that's a missed opportunity to me. And it's not like sports fans here, Allan, aren't as passionate. You would know this. It's not like sports fans here aren't as passionate as they are south of the 49th parallel. They absolutely are. What is the problem? Yeah, there we go. Mr. Tattoo himself. Why? Like, it shouldn't be this way. And I worry about the future of the Fan or TSN 1050, whatever it is. What is the major difference in not even necessarily the company you're working for on a broad range, but the market you're handling right now, Buffalo, diehard fans, passionate fans. If the Bills or the Sabres ever win a championship, the earth might open up. Like, they love their teams. What's the difference down there? You're like an hour across the border. What's the difference?
Ryan, you should do a show. I can tell you that.
Thanks.
That was really very well done. We engage with the audience. Let me frame it this way. When you listen to sports radio in Toronto, and it doesn't matter, maybe a little more on TSN than on the Fan, I don't hear a lot of call-in. And if you want to challenge, if you want to develop a host, Bob McCowan wasn't developed, and Chris brought up Mark Hebscher. They weren't developed by calling guests. Mm-hmm. Their personalities grew and developed from handling callers. That's what it was. It was callers. And that's what I don't hear. There's a rabid Leaf Nation up there that's going crazy. But when I tune in to either one of those stations, I don't get that feeling. I do not get that feeling. And they don't, in my view, cover the story that's most important in that town the way that I would. If I were there, I would probably say this morning, it's all about the Leafs. The story is about the Leafs right now. And the fact is, all day long, I don't want to hear anything else except the Leafs. I don't want to talk soccer. I don't want to talk about the Blue Jays. I don't want to talk about, Raptors. I don't want to talk about anyone. The Leafs are number one story. I want to hear the Leafs all day long. When someone tunes in, I want to hear a listener going off on the Leafs. I want to hear a host going off on the Leafs, going off on a listener. Hear the passion. Hear it. You do not hear it. Listen to WGR or stations that allow that. You will hear it. You hear the passion. That's why you know there's passion down here, because you hear it. Mm-hmm. I don't hear that on Toronto radio. Mm-hmm. I can tell you, I've tuned in from times when there are huge stories up there, and I'll tune in, and that segment was about the Raptors. Next, we're going to talk about the Blue Jays. The next segment, it's about taking care of a number of different constituents that are out there. It doesn't work that way. It's not magazine-like that way. It's passionate one-on-one radio. You have to return to that. You have to engage the audience. Back before there was all sports radio, there was Montreal Jack. And right? Who didn't want to just listen to Montreal Jack go off all the time?
Yeah. Allan in a cab, the taxi driver. Yeah.
You don't have that. I never hear that. There's no character development as a result of it. There's no character development other than Jeff O'Neill and the guys on that afternoon show. They get it. They understand how to have fun. They understand how to keep somebody listening.
It's the only show worth listening to.
Yeah.
Even in that respect, I mean, they don't really take very many calls, but they do interact with fans on Twitter. They'll bring a tweet up, stuff like that. And that's the bare minimum, and they're as good as it gets. And I think they are very good. But you're right. I mean, it's the thing that makes sports so special, Allan. And I think, Clarkie, you just showed your Leaf tattoo off, is the passion and the fan base. It doesn't matter. Barcelona, Real Madrid doesn't matter if 90,000 people don't show up in Spain, in downtown Madrid. Leafs Habs doesn't matter if there aren't 20,000 people in downtown Montreal or Toronto. Bills Patriots, I don't care. Go down the list. The fans are what drives sports, and it's great to have all the talent in the world on the radio spewing off about stories and breaking news headlines, which the internet has basically gotten rid of anyway, like you said. The fans want to feel like they're a part of the franchise they cheer for, and by extension, you'll probably find you're going to be successful in this medium if you're letting them lend their voice to the medium covering those teams that they love.
The station is called The Fan. The station is called The Fan.
And there's
not the team, even though there are some called the team. This is called The Fan in Toronto. Anyway.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's exactly right. You get up each day and you say to yourself, what are the top 3 stories? And you have a listener's attention only for so long. Mm-hmm. In Buffalo, it's 20 minutes. That's commute time. Now they're engaging on this now more and more. So it can be longer, but the principle's still the same. If I tune in, you better be talking about what I want to listen to. Otherwise, I'm checking out because I can go somewhere else to get it. And if I wake up in the morning and I tell you right now, there's a pennant race going on. And if I tune in, I better know that I'm going to be talking. That's what I'm going to hear. I'm going to hear a lot about that. And I don't hear, let's go back to the phones, right?
No, never.
Are the Blue Jays going to make it or not make it, right? Are they in this hunt for real? Are they real or are they not real? Do we have the pitching? Do we have the hitting? Is Vlad going to, is he going to carry us or not carry us? What do you think? I want to hear that. I don't hear that on those stations. In fact, I would probably launch a third station and do nothing but call in. I would say no guests ever. That's a complete flip from when we launched, but that's what I would do. I would basically have a place for the fans to really let it out.
Well, let's do it, Allan. Get your company to launch one in Toronto. We'll get a frequency. The 590 might be up soon.
Yeah. You never know. Allan, this is music to my ears as a longtime sports radio listener, because I feel like, and Clarkie kind of, let me know about this. Like, you seem to be a guy that has that innovative spirit and really across radio, forget sports radio here in Canada. That is, I can tell you from experience working in it, it's sorely lacking. No one wants to try anything new. You talk about 92 and launching this new sports talk radio. What a risk. No one's taking risks up here. It's boring. It's stale. Nobody wants to pay attention. And we're going to lose potentially great properties like the Fan. God help us that we don't lose it, but it might happen because of this stale atmosphere that we're in. And boy, we could talk about this for ages. Before we let you go, Allan, you've been so gracious with your time. We appreciate it. I want to ask you a couple quick opinions about the market you're covering, obviously, Buffalo. It's an exciting time to be a Buffalo sports fan. The Sabres seem to be turning around a little bit, which would make me happy because my cousin used to be the captain there. Shout out cousin Chris. And it would, and obviously the Bills.
What? I was going to ask earlier.
Yes.
If it's the same Drury family. Look at that.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes, it is. Cousin Chris, he's a distant cousin of mine, but he's a fantastic guy, obviously having lots of success in New York. Exciting to be a Bills fan, too. Real quick, Bills, they win in the Super Bowl this year?
They're going to be in the hunt the whole way. I can't tell you whether they're winning or not because that comes down to the game they play, but there's no more exciting football player in the league today than Josh Allen. And when you saw what he did with the Patriots and then Kansas City, even though they lost that game against Kansas City, as the last 2 games he played last year, to come back and play the way he did against the Rams, to show his skill and his poise and his confidence together with everything else. So yeah, they're definitely going to be. I wouldn't take them over anybody else to win. So yeah, they could win it, absolutely, but you still got to play the games.
You got to play the games, but I agree. I think they are the slam dunk favorite. You look at Allan, he can spread the ball and put it anywhere. If it's not available, he can do it with his feet. You've got a great receiving core with Diggs and McKenzie, who's a breakout star. Davis is a breakout star. They have a decent running game, not an elite running game, but a decent running game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they were the number 1 defensive team last year. That adds Von Miller. Tre'Davious White hasn't even played yet, and look what they did to the Rams, the Super Bowl defending champions in the season opener. I think they're a slam dunk. I'd be putting all my chips on the Bills, and they've got a chip on their shoulder. They want to get rid of the Scott Norwood, wide right, 4 straight Super Bowls. They want to erase that legacy. You got it. Josh Allen is the guy to do it. Sabres, you think they'll make the playoffs?
No, I don't know that they'll make the playoffs, but I certainly am excited to watch them. And, it transitioned when Don Granato took over that team. He was the first coach in a long time to really connect with those players. And he basically said, just go play hockey. He said, go play hockey. Imagine that. He didn't sit them down and say, don't do this, don't do that, stop doing this, stop doing that. He just said, go play hockey, do what you do best. And you saw the difference that happened right away in Darlene and other players. All of a sudden, Darlene was, half the fan base here were done with him. I might have been one of them, said, if this kid isn't going to develop, then we might as well move him. But to watch him in the second half of the season was absolutely tremendous. And to see when they brought Alex Tuck in, who's from the area, and so embraced being here. And what Kevin Allen wanted, he got, which was he wants people in Buffalo who want to play for the Buffalo Sabres. And so he has created another culture similar to what Brandon Beam and Sean McDermott have done with the Bills. And so I'm excited for the Sabres. They're definitely going to be in every game. But whether or not they make the playoffs, I don't know. They'll be in the hunt for a while. And, I think the Red Wings are going to be right there too. So, that division's tough, and Red Wings with Steve Eisman, what he's doing. So those two are going to battle, I think. Ottawa is going to be better. So making the playoffs could be tough, but entertaining and wanting to watch, absolutely. Totally.
And I think that's all that Sabres fans can ask for after a decade plus of mediocrity. And you mentioned it, Tuck, a kid from the area. Our friend Dwayne Steinel. Dwayne, I know you're watching. He predicted it, that he's going to be the next captain. Makes a lot of sense. He wants to be there. Jack Eichel clearly didn't. Peyton Krebs, Darlene. I think Yoki Haru has untapped potential. I mean, they've got a roster. Tage Thompson went off last year. I can't recall outside of
Power. Owen Power is going to be an anchor back there for a decade more.
He's a freak.
Real deal.
He's a tower of power, and he plays like a forward sometimes. It's incredible, the two-way potential of him, and who better to lead those young guys than a guy that led the U.S. national team development program for a long time in the man they call Donnie Meatballs, Don Granato. Obviously very exciting. The one thing that might hold them back a little bit is their goaltending, and that'll be my final little rapid fire for you, if you will. Lots of talk about Ryan Miller, obviously, a beloved Sabre. Do you think Ryan Miller is a Hockey Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I do. I hope that happens for him. Yeah. I think goaltenders get a bad rap. So, sometimes a goaltender whose all his numbers are good except for wins or Stanley Cups, I don't think you can judge a goaltender like that. A goaltender, well, look at Dominic Hasek. Without Dominic Hasek, the Buffalo Sabres don't do what they do, right? There's no way. So, yeah, I do think he's a Hall of Famer, and I hope that happens for him.
I think you'll make a lot of Buffalo fans happy with that message. I agree. I think he's a Hall of Famer. 371 wins, a Vezina trophy, and he was a staple there. Miller time, he had a saying after him. Rick Jenneret coined a saying. When Rick Jenneret coins a saying after you're probably a Hall of Famer, at least in the hearts of Buffalo Sabres fans.
Rick's got a bunch of them. I'll tell you that. That's for sure.
Yeah, he left a vapor trail. How about that? It's Rick was absolutely the best. And Allan, this has been the best. What a great conversation. We appreciate your time. Best of luck with everything going on down there. Again, it's an exciting time to cover Buffalo sports. We really, really appreciate this, Allan.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you having me on. Chris, good talking to you. Good seeing you, buddy.
Same, Allan.
All right, that's it for us here this week. Remember, you can watch the show Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 with our friends on Whiteman TV. That is Channel 6 for Whiteman subscribers. We debut on our YouTube channel every Friday night at 9. You can follow us on social media at InstigatingPod across all the best social media platforms. And you can find the podcast version of the show on all the best podcast apps, including Spotify and Apple. For myself, Ryan Drury, that's Clarkie. We appreciate our friends Steve Fitzsimmons of the Hanover Raceway and Allan Davis of WGR 550 Sports Radio down in Buffalo for joining us on the show this week. We'll be back next week with more Instigating.